I want to talk to you about how to make your model in an appropriate scale. So if you remember the drawing of the Greek revival that I had done and shown in that assignment, uh, this particular home is 2 stories. Well, a typical home in America in 2016 was anywhere between 1,400 and 2,400 square feet. So if I have 2 stories, I need to take 2 stories, and let's say I'm going on the large side of average. If I have 2,400 square feet divided by 2 perfectly equal stories, that makes each story 1,200 square feet. Let me write that down. So I have 2,400 square feet divided by 2 floors instead of stories, I call it floors, equals 1,200 square feet per floor. Let me go to a new page. Now I'm on a new page. So this is a top view, and this was my entrance. I don't know if you remember from that Greek revival, but I had kind of this overhang. That's not going to count in square footage. So if I have 1,200 square feet total area here, I need to figure out what two numbers can I multiply together to get 1,200. So I have a 30 feet by 40 feet building. So that gives me a rough idea of the size of my building. Now, if I want my building to fit on this about the approximate size of a piece of paper like this, if I want this to be my footprint, so looking at this, my building maybe is 40 feet by 30 feet. If I want it to be somewhat like this, then I'm going to have maybe a 10-inch represents my 40-foot side. So if I want the long edge of my building to be 10 inches, and that represents 40 feet, then I'm going to write down a ratio. And my ratio is 40 feet is to 10 inches. So let's simplify this. And I simplify it to 4 feet is 1 inch, or 4 feet equals 1 inch. Now you'll notice I use nice happy numbers like 40 and 30, and I made the long edge of my model. I said the long edge of my model, I want to be 10 inches. That makes my ratios turn out to be really, really nice. If I were to make this long edge of my model be 12 inches, a foot long, then I have 40 feet is 12 inches. And that does not make a nice happy fraction. So it works out a whole lot better since we don't have specifics on what our model size has to be. It works out really easy. If you figure out, well, maybe my building is 50 feet, you can still make the length of that building be 10 inches. And then you're just going to have a 5-to-1 ratio, or 5 feet equals 1 inch. Now that I have my ratio right up here of 4 feet is to 1 inch, so again, the 4 feet represents, or the 40 feet represents the size of the actual home. The 10 inches represents the size of the model. So actual home versus model. So 40 feet of the home is 10 inches of the model. 4 feet of the home is 1 inch of the model. So now I'm looking back to my front view. So you could use your actual front view that you have that you've drawn. And this is a more simplified version of my front view, but I'm going to show you a couple very typical measurements. The front door is probably going to be around 7 feet. So how many inches is that going to be on my model? Well, I set up my ratio, 4 feet is to 1 inch, as, 7 feet, because I have my actual is on the top, 4 feet, my actual door is 7 feet, is to X inches for the model, which is on the bottom. So then I cross multiply and divide. 7 times 1 divided by 4 is going to give me 1.75 inches. So on your model, your door is 1.75 inches tall. If you don't use these ratios, your doors and windows are going to be really disproportionate, and it's just not going to look right. You could do the same thing here for the entire height of the house. Now we know the width of the house is 40 feet. We've already done that ratio above. 40 feet is 10 inches wide. But what about a 20-foot tall house? Because it's 2 stories, and each story is approximately 10 feet. That makes a really easy measurement if you use 10 feet for the height of your story. Well, if 20 feet is the height of my actual house, then let's figure out how tall my house is going to be for the model. So I bet some of you have already done this mental math, but I've set up the ratio down at the very, very, very bottom. 4 feet is to 1 inch as 20 feet is to X inches, because that's the height of the house, and X inches is how tall the model is going to be. We cross multiply and divide, and we get 5 inches tall for the house. Now, 5 inches tall is not really that tall, but remember, that does not include the roof either. So the roof is going to add some extra height. So this is just going to be really helpful when you're creating your walls. Of course, this is the easiest possible design because it's just a rectangle. So if your sketch from your bird's eye view doesn't look like a perfect rectangle, then you're going to have to sort of estimate what the cutouts are going to be and the areas, but try to make easy numbers. And you can estimate this. We're not going to actually have a floor plan here, so it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to get the basic idea. Hopefully that gets you started on some basic ideas for how to do scale. The other things you're going to have to include are windows. Windows sometimes are about 4 feet tall. Well, in this scale, that makes them just 1 inch. Trust me, this will work. Sometimes it feels like your houses are not very tall, but that's because oftentimes if we do it without scale, we're going to make them look way too tall and it's going to look cartoony and it's not going to actually be the scale. So follow this process and you should be in good shape.